Imagine a world where every dollar, pound, or franc was backed by an equivalent amount of gold. This was the reality for much of modern history under the gold standard, a monetary system that once dictated the rise and fall of global economies. Though it was abandoned in the 20th century, its legacy continues to influence debates about financial stability, inflation, and even the future of cryptocurrencies. In this video, we'll delve into the history of the gold standard, why it emerged, why it ended, and how its lessons remain relevant in today's economic landscape. The gold standard is a monetary system in which a country's currency is directly tied to a specific amount of gold. This means governments could only issue money if they had enough gold to back it up. For example, under the classical gold standard in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, countries like the United States and Britain set fixed rates for exchanging their currencies for gold. This system created a level of stability that fostered international trade. With gold as a universal benchmark, businesses and governments could transact with confidence, knowing the value of their currency was consistent across borders. However, this stability came with a significant downside: the inflexibility of tying money supply to gold reserves. The origins of the gold standard can be traced back to the early 19th century, when countries began adopting gold as their primary monetary standard. Britain officially embraced it in 1821, and other nations followed suit, particularly during the late 19th century. This era, known as the classical gold standard, lasted roughly from 1870 to 1914. The adoption of the gold standard coincided with the Industrial Revolution and the expansion of global trade. Gold-backed currencies facilitated stable exchange rates, making it easier for countries to conduct business across borders. For emerging economies, adherence to the gold standard was often seen as a mark of financial credibility, signaling that a country's currency was reliable and stable. During this period, gold discoveries in places like California and South Africa helped fuel economic expansion by increasing the global supply of gold. These new reserves allowed for the growth of money supplies, enabling industrialization and urbanization to flourish. While the gold standard brought stability, it also imposed strict limitations. Because money supply was tied to gold reserves, governments couldn't simply print money to respond to economic crises. This rigidity often exacerbated economic downturns. For instance, during the Great Depression of the 1930s, countries adhering to the gold standard were unable to stimulate their economies by increasing the money supply, leading to prolonged periods of deflation and unemployment. Additionally, the gold standard created disparities between countries with abundant gold reserves and those without. Nations without sufficient gold struggled to maintain their economies, often resorting to borrowing or cutting spending to stay afloat. This imbalance sowed the seeds of inequality and economic dependency, particularly for developing nations. The classical gold standard came to an abrupt halt with the outbreak of World War I in 1914. As countries diverted resources to fund their war efforts, they suspended the gold standard to print money freely. Attempts to reinstate it in the interwar years failed due to economic instability and the Great Depression. The final blow came in 1971 when US President Richard Nixon ended the convertibility of the dollar into gold, effectively dismantling the Bretton Woods system. This marked the beginning of the fiat currency era, where money is not backed by any physical commodity, but rather by the trust and credit of governments. The decision to abandon the gold standard was driven by several factors. First, economic flexibility. Second, gold supply limitations. And third, global imbalances. Countries like the US faced trade deficits, leading to an unsustainable outflow of gold. Despite its demise, the gold standard offers valuable lessons for today's economic challenges. Its emphasis on fiscal discipline and limiting inflation resonates with critics of modern monetary policy, who argue that fiat currencies are vulnerable to overprinting and devaluation. The gold standard also highlights the importance of maintaining global trust in a currency. During its heyday, gold-backed money provided a level of confidence that modern fiat currencies often struggle to match, particularly during periods of inflation or economic uncertainty. Interestingly, the gold standard's legacy is echoed in the rise of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. Bitcoin's fixed supply of 21 million coins mimics the scarcity of gold, appealing to those who value financial stability and resistance to inflation. Proponents argue that Bitcoin and similar assets could serve as a modern alternative to the gold standard, providing a decentralized and transparent monetary system. However, cryptocurrencies face challenges of their own, including price volatility and lack of widespread adoption. While they may never fully replace fiat currencies, they offer an intriguing glimpse into how the principles of the gold standard could be reimagined for the digital age. Today, debates about the gold standard's relevance persist. Some economists advocate for a return to a gold-backed system, citing concerns about government overspending and fiat currency instability. Others argue that such a move would be impractical and overly restrictive in a globalized economy. Meanwhile, central banks around the world continue to hold significant gold reserves, reflecting its enduring status as a store of value. In times of crisis, such as the 2008 financial meltdown or the COVID-19 pandemic, gold prices often surge as investors seek a safe haven. The gold standard was a cornerstone of global finance for over a century, shaping the way economies operated and interacted. While its limitations ultimately led to its abandonment, its lessons remain highly relevant. From fiscal discipline to the trust underpinning monetary systems, the gold standard's legacy continues to influence economic thought and policy. As we navigate a world of fiat currencies, rising debt, and digital assets, the history of the gold standard offers both cautionary tales and inspiration. What do you think? Could a modernized version of the gold standard, or even cryptocurrency, offer solutions to today's economic challenges? Let us know in the comments below.